Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Jiri Patoka. Welcome to Visiting Lecturer Series held by Agribusiness Study Program, Faculty of Science and Technology, Universitas Terbuka, Tuesday, 27th of September 2022.
Terima kasih.
Hello, Dr. Patoka. Thank you for joining us this morning in Prague. Okay, so allow me to extend our warmest greetings to the honorable speaker and guest, Dr. Jiri Patoka, PhD, as Associate Professor at the Department of Zoology and Fisheries, Faculty of Agrobiology, Food and Natural Resources, Czech University of Life Science, Prague. Welcome, Dr. Patoka. Thank you very much for joining us today. And also Dr. Subekti Nurmawati, MSc, as the Dean of Science and Technology Faculty, Universitas Terbuka. Dr. Ernik Juliana as Vice Dean of Academic Affairs, Dr. Endang Indrawati as Vice Dean of General and Financial Affairs, Dr. Dewi Julia Ratnaningsi as Vice Dean for Students Affairs and Collaboration, Dr. Indah Novianti as Head of Agricultural Department, Dr. Andes Jan Hotman as Head of Agribusiness Study Programs, also all of Head of Departments and Head of Study Programs in Faculty of Science and Technology, lecturers, and also all participants. I am Fenty Fitriani Nurunisa. I feel very honored to be the host for today's event. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let us be grateful that we can gather here today, 27th of September 2022, because over the next few hours, we will have opportunities to discuss and share the knowledge, insights, and of course, current development related to the biodiversity issues, especially about crayfish biodiversities. Before we start, allow me to give a short description about this program. Visiting Lecturer Program is a series program held by Agribusiness Study Program, Faculty of Science and Technology, Universitas Terbuka, which aim to improve the knowledge and insight of lecturers and academic community of Faculty of Science and Technology about current updates on specific issues or research findings in certain fields. Furthermore, this event also aims to strengthen the academic collaboration between academic institutions, in this case, Faculty of Science and Technology, Universitas Terbuka, and Czech University of Life Science. I will read the agenda of today's forum, which will be started by opening by the host, and then followed by getting closer to Universitas Terbuka through watching the UT video profile, followed by singing the national anthem of Indonesia, and then greetings from the Dean of Faculty of Science and Technology, Dr. Subekti Nurmawati. And then our main agenda is presentation about crayfish biodiversity from Dr. Jiri Patoka, PhD, Associate Professor at Department of Zoology and Fisheries, Czech University of Life Science. And then followed by Q&A session, certificate of appreciation to speaker, and closing. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we start, please allow me to give some information about visiting lecturer rules. The first, please turn off your microphone during presentation. You can turn on your microphone when moderator has allowed you to do so, especially in Q&A session. The Q&A session will be started after the speaker finishes the presentation. If you have a question, please type in the Q&A box or in the chat box. Don't forget to mention your name and the questions. The attendance form and feedback form will be shared at the end of this event. Ladies and gentlemen, to gain more information about Universitas Terbuka, first let us watch the following video about Universitas Terbuka profile.
Opening your eyes to the importance of education. the younger generation, as they have the same rights to continue their education to a higher level, growing in knowledge, enhancing good character, and to have a brighter future. Universitas Terbuka is established to make the dreams of young men and women from all corners of the country come true through the distance higher education system to meet the ever-changing demands of industrial and technological development in the 21st century.
Dengan diresmikannya Universitas Terbuka.
Universitas Terbuka is a pioneer of world-quality distance higher education, which is supported by professional lecturers who are experienced in their own field of expertise. Universitas Terbuka has also made numerous innovations to solve current educational challenges by applying a digital learning ecosystem to build capable and quality future leaders.
Hampir 4 dasawarsa UT mengabdi untuk bangsa. Universitas Terbuka mewujudkan pendidikan tinggi untuk semua.
With the long experience of carrying out our mission of providing equal access to higher education for everyone in Indonesia, Universitas Terbuka has proven to be a trusted public higher education institution. Our graduates have successfully into their chosen career fields as either professionals or entrepreneurs. As of 2022, UT has a student body of just over 350,000. As a cyber university who teaches and applies the latest technology, Universitas Terbuka has 4 faculties, including the Faculty of Economics, the Faculty of Law, Social and Political Sciences, the Faculty of Science and Technology, and the Faculty of Education and Teacher Training. As a successful distance higher education institution, UT has received various awards and achievements. For instance, the rector of Universitas Terbuka, Professor Ojat Darajat, was elected by acclamation as the president of Asian Association of Open Universities for the period of 2020 to 2022. Time and time again, UT continues to make important innovations by using the most advanced communication technology and information available in each of its programs. Through the implementation of lifelong learning, UT also provides certificate programs and tuition-free programs such as open educational resources, as well as free lectures to be accessed by everyone. Limitation is not a hindrance for people to continue their education to a higher level, because education is a fundamental human right for everyone that can be accessed easily. This is Universitas Terbuka, always thinking forward, always open to diversity.
Pendidikan tinggi bagi semua anak negeri.
Universitas Terbuka menjangkau yang tidak terjangkau.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mahdi. Ladies and gentlemen, next we will hear the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. Participant, please be seated. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, as a start of our event, let's hear greetings from Dean of Faculty of Science and Technology, Universitas Terbuka. Therefore, I would like to invite Dr. Subakti Nurmawati to the main room.
Okay, thank you, FST. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Good
wabarakatuh.
morning and Sehnia for Dr. Jiri Patoka, and good afternoon in Indonesia. Best wishes to all of us. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. In this very fine day and good health, we are able to gather in this webinar, and it is our privilege that we can join in a Zoom meeting. Our Honorable Jiri Patoka, PhD, Associate Professor at the Department of Zoology and Fisheries, Faculty of Agrobiology, Food and Natural Resources, Sheikh University of Life Sciences, Prague. Our Honorable Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, Dr. Enik Juliana, Vice Dean for General Affairs, Mrs. Endang Indrawati, Master of Arts, Vice Dean of Student and Cooperation Affairs, Dr. Devi Julia, our Honorable Head of Departments and Study Programs in Faculty of Science and Technology Universitas Terbuka, lecturers and students of Faculty of Science and Technology Universitas Terbuka, and all of participants who present in this webinar. Firstly, praise is to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala because of His permissions. Today, we are able to attend the visiting lecturer series 1 from our extraordinary speaker, Dr. Jiri Patoka, as an ethologists or an expert in crayfish at the Czech University of Life Sciences, Prague, with the topic Crayfish Biodiversity. This event is organized by the Agribusiness Study Program, Faculty of Science and Technology, Universitas Terbuka. Dear visiting lecturer participants, based on the data from National Research and Innovation Agency, Indonesia is a country with the second highest terrestrial biodiversity in the world. However, when it combined with marine biodiversity, Indonesia is the first. Talk about crayfish, the member of crustacean. Indonesia as a maritime country has high crustacean resources. This resource also support the current Indonesian fishery export. The Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries reported that in 2020 till 2024, around 45% of the total value of Indonesian fishery export comes from crustaceans. Even around 2 million people, or around 30% on farm fisheries workers, work in the business of catching and cultivating crustaceans. Indonesia's crustacean biodiversity does not only come from seawater, but also from freshwater. There are about 369 freshwater crustacean species that have been found and identified, including some species of freshwater crayfish. The crustacean aquaculture and capture business activities are able to create very wide multiplier effects. The most common threat facing species, among others, result from pollution, urban development, damming and water management, and massive exploitation. The study notes that despite growing evidence for freshwater biodiversity crisis, freshwater species, particularly invertebrates such as crayfish, are underrepresented on endangered species list and in management plan for biodiversity. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully after attending this visiting lecture, it can inspire us to continue working to develop research, especially for the crayfish that can be useful for the wider community. We express our gratitude to Jiri Patoka, PSD, for the time and sharing. I would like to thank the Agribusiness study program for starting this good activity with Sheikh University. We hope there will be continued collaboration and teaching, research, and community services. Lastly, we would like to thank all parties that we have not mentioned one by one who has helped organize today's visiting lectures. That's all from me. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Subakti Nurmawati, for a very insightful greetings. Thank you once again, Dr. Nurma. Ladies and gentlemen, now we arrive at the main agenda. I would like to invite our speaker, Dr. Injiri Patoka, PhD, Associate Professor at the Department of Zoology and Fisheries, Czech University of Life Science, Prague. Hello, Dr. Jiri Patoka, PhD. Thank you for coming.
Hello.
It's very nice to see you again this morning.
Yeah. Morning in my country.
Yes, here we are at 2 p.m. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we start the main agenda, I would like to share a brief CV of Dr. Patoka. Dr. Patoka was born in 1978 in Rakovník, Prague, and currently he is an associate professor at the Department of Zoology and Fisheries, Faculty of Agrobiology, Food and Natural Resources, Czech University of Life Science, Prague. And his expertise is especially in biology, ecology, ethology, and taxonomy of decapod crustaceans. Yeah, this is also what you will explain to us today about crayfish, which also has been your main issues of research. Okay, so I believe everyone here can wait to hear your presentation. We reached 1,000 participants this afternoon, which just shows how excited we are here in Faculty of Science and Technology to hear your sharing. So without any further ado, please welcome Dr. Jiri Patoka, PhD.
So thank you very much for nice introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to be the visiting lecturer at the Universitas Terbuka. My topic for today is crayfish biodiversity. I will share my screen. Do you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. So my email address is here if somebody would like to discuss privately after the lesson. I'm open for the discussion, and thank you very much for this wide auditory. This is the biggest session as I can participate ever. So now the topic is crayfish biodiversity, and I would like to refer also on the current status of crayfish in Indonesia. This map.
Pardon me, Dr. Patoka, would you mind to set your PowerPoint at full screen view?
Is it not working?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Maybe
Again.
it's
Is it okay?
on the right bottom. Yes, that's perfect.
Yeah,
thank you.
Working? Okay, so sorry for the chaotic beginning, but hopefully the presentation will be running in order. So the crayfish biodiversity. Here is the world map, and you can see the blue color, which indicates a number of species of crayfish, of freshwater crayfish, lobster, artavar, on the world. The most important hotspot for crayfish biodiversity is North America. You can see the southeastern part of the United States, which is the the place where most of the crayfish species occur. But not only North America is important, also Australia and New Guinea, which which western part of the island is of Indonesian territory. So these two parts of the world are the most important. The other crayfish species occur in Europe, in Eastern Asia, and in South America and Madagascar. But there are just few species in comparison with the hotspots in North America and Australia and Indonesia. Currently, more than 600 crayfish species are formally described, but year by year, new species are discovered for science and new species are formally described. So the total number of crayfish species on the planet will be higher than 600 for sure. Here is a map of Indonesia. You can see that the territory of Indonesia covers 3 biodiversity hotspots. There are more than 17,000 islands. The population is very high and close to be 300 million. And 3 biodiversity hotspots, Sundaland, Wallasa, and Sahul. These hotspots are native range for various endemic taxa and of plants and animals as well. And the biodiversity richness in Indonesia is very high, awesome. Well, now about the indigenous crayfish species in Indonesia, native species. Where are they? This is the map of Indonesia, and you can see the territory of New Guinea. I mean, provinces West Papua and Papua. Native crayfish are only there. In the rest of Indonesia, there are no native crayfish species, and we will talk about some non-native species there later in this presentation. But native species are just in Papua and West Papua. The genus of crayfish in Papua is the only one, the single genus which is called Herax. And there are up to 26 species currently formally described, some of them by my team also, like Herax gerardi, Herax subterigneus, and Herax acherontis. And there are many species which are unknown for science, and the estimation for the total number is much higher, up to 100 taxa. This one, cave crayfish from Papua, is very important because the other cave crayfish on the world, all of them are native to North America. This is the only one cave crayfish which is from the southern hemisphere, and especially from the native range out of the North America. The discovery of the species was so surprising for me. It was done by my team in 2017, and it was surprising for the rest of the scientific community focused on crayfish biodiversity, because, for example, Australian scientists would like to discover the native Australian cave crayfish, and they were not successful for the period of 80 years. And finally, we found the cave crayfish out of North America in Papua in 2017. And the territory of Papua, the landscape is very promising in this regard, because there are many caves, many of them are flooded, and there is a possibility of other cave crayfish species which are endemics for this region, for the cave system. And I'm sure that in future more cave crayfish will be discovered in Papua. But currently it is not so easy to obtain the research permit to this provinces, and we will see how to manage the research in future. But the situation is very promising. The this crayfish, Herax acherontis, was discovered close to the city of Bamena in the Central Highland, where the Baliem River is flowing through. Here is the holotype, the male, which is currently deposited in the Zoology Museum in Bogor, where Dr. Daisy Bobor is the curator. And you can see the holotype directly captured in the cave. You can see very, very narrow and long claws, also very long antennas and very small eyes. The body coloration is pale because this creature is living completely in the dark. So the coloration is not necessary for it. And this is the same morphological feature as for the other cave crayfish or cave animals in general. This is the map of Herax crayfish, all Herax crayfish on the planet. You can see that they are native to Australia, some parts of Australia, and also parts of New Guinea. There are many crayfish which are endemics of very limited, restricted area. Just one small lake like Situ or one small stream, and some water pollution or human activities which can be risky for these animals can have dramatic consequences to the species in general, because the abundance of these population is not so high, and especially in cave the density and abundance of the crayfish are very low, because there are very limited sources like food and shelters and so on, and it is not possible to live there in dense population in comparison with some animals which live out of the cave systems. So any human activities which can be harmful for these animals can be well managed. When not, so many species can be lost in the near future. And on the other hand, there are also some crayfish which are not endangered but invasive, and I will refer on these animals later in this presentation. You can see that there are some species which are living also in Australia and in New Guinea. Two species, Herax quadricarinatus and Herax rhynchotus, but the others are endemics directly for Papua or some small islands in the vicinity, and this is the heritage of Indonesia, because these animals are not living elsewhere. The estimated total number in New Guinea is 100, not only in Indonesian part of the island, but also in PNG. And this is my estimation. It was based after a discussion with Dr. Daisy Bobor, and we discussed the total number of the crayfish, but she decided to the total number will be much lower. But I disagreed, because the variability of the terrain of the landscape in New Guinea is very high. And when we discovered the cave crayfish, so I'm sure that there will be more than one species, and therefore I decided the total number of Herax crayfish will be similar to the total number of crayfish in Australia, and the total number of crayfish in Australia is slightly more than 100. So I decided that in New Guinea there can be also 100 of freshwater crayfish species, many of them scientifically undescribed. So this is our vision for future, to survey the island. About non-indigenous crayfish species, non-native. This is Herax quadricarinatus. It is native to part of the Papua, but in the rest of Indonesia it is non-native. It was introduced from Australia to Surabaya in Java a few years before. It was surprising for me because everybody predicted that this crayfish was introduced from Papua, but that was not true. It was introduced from Australia. You can see the red patch on the outer margin of claw of adult male. This is the connection to the common name of this crayfish, which is red claw. Uh, Females are without this red patch, just adult males bear this coloration. This crayfish was first recorded in Indonesia in 2016, also by my team in Java, close to the city of Bogor, and they were discovered in two lakes, Lido and Chilaka. And the population was estimated to be well established and self-sustaining. So the further spreading of the animal was expected. Moreover, there are some native decapod crustaceans in these lakes, like freshwater shrimps from the genus Macrobranchium, and these can be and are currently in risk due to the spreading of Carax quadricarinatus, which is bigger, which is more aggressive, and can directly outcompete the native shrimps from the lake, like in Lido Lake. This situation was also described by Dr. Daisy Wovor recently. This was the first record in 2016. What follows? 2 years later, after some another survey, we found the Carax quadricarinatus to be more widespread in Indonesia, not only in Java, but you can see on the other islands like Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and some smaller islands like Batam and Bintan. And there are many populations cultured and intentionally introduced by local people, by some farmers, and produced for human consumption because their meat is luxury food, and also as ornamental animals for keeping in home aquaria for its aesthetic function. And there are two types of the localities where the crayfish was found. One, some ponds and outdoor farms and so on, which can be considered to be artificial, but also some wild localities like streams and lakes were found, and this is really alarming because the spreading of the crayfish can have dramatic negative consequences for native biome. After that, in 2021, we published the dataset from detailed survey of Java Island. And you can see that Carax quadricarinatus was found almost everywhere. There are many localities where the crayfish was introduced for the culture, or many localities where it established new populations after escaping some farming systems and so on. And moreover, some people released intentionally the crayfish to the vicinity because how is it possible? Because no one cares about nativeness of the crayfish and about some negative consequences, possible negative consequences, because the Carax crayfish are perceived to be native to Indonesia. It is true, but only for Papua and West Papua, not for the rest of the Indonesia. It is wrong approach to perceive the whole Indonesia as the one single territory. There are more than 17,000 islands with many endemic species there. So it is clear that some species can be native for one island, but non-native for the others. And this is the true also for crayfish, for red claw. And unfortunately, the decision makers and the government do not care about this situation currently. I would like to improve this situation after communication with academic staff from various universities in Indonesia, like Terbuka, like IPB, Unsud, and so on. And I hope that these publications, which I present here, can be beneficial in this regard to show the data, to show the possible consequences, and to suggest the solution, how to improve the situation. This is the Herex quadricarinatus, as I mentioned, but and here are some pictures of the culture. There are different types of the culturing systems. On the picture on right top, you can see the farm in Central Java, close to the Purwokerto, which is outdoor, but with artificial ponds which are isolated from the vicinity, from the streams in the vicinity. Here is also picture of farm in Magelang, in Central Java, which is completely indoor, and these tanks are also isolated from the stream. But there are also two other types. Kemang Lake in West Java, close to the Bogor, which is the natural lake where crayfish are or had been cultured in net cages. But these net cages were not covered, and crayfish easily escape from the cage and inhabit the lake. And there is currently no possibility how to take the crayfish from the lake back to the cages and so on. And so it established the population which can spread to the vicinity. And the picture from Lombok, it's this is the farm for ornamental animals, some fish and so on, and also for some crop production, which is used for crop production, and some ponds were used for the crayfish culture, for red claw. But we visited this locality together with Dr. Jon Wittner in 2019 because the information was that from the locals was that there is cultured Procambarus clarki, different species of crayfish which is native to North America, and this is really high risky species. So we decided to visit the locality to catch the crayfish and to say, okay, this is the first record, it's there. But it was completely misunderstanding and misidentification, because the crayfish there was not red swamp crayfish from North America, but red claw crayfish from Australia. And what was surprising for us, the crayfish was not produced there from 2009. And the reason was that the price declined dramatically, and the farmer decided to release all of the crayfish, all of the stock to the vicinity. So crayfish easily established new population in the vicinity and invaded back the farm, and currently they are everywhere. They can damage the dams and are not so friendly for the farmer. So this was the bad solution. And when somebody culture non-native animal, it is not possible to release them to the vicinity because these animals can, and not only crayfish, like fishes and so on, these animals can easily damage the ecosystem, and there are many consequences, very negative consequences of the spreading, and not only environmental but also social economical losses. Easily in this example we can imagine that some damages which can be caused by Herax quadricarinatus due to burrowing activity in the dams can be very negative for the economical situation of the farmer. So do not release non-native crayfish elsewhere. Another one is Procambarus clarki. As I mentioned before, it was not found in Lombok, but unfortunately we found this crayfish in Java Island. This is North American crayfish, which is a very successful invader. And this one is the most cultured species on the world, not only in the southeastern part of North America, but also the huge production is currently in China and in other countries which are focused on the crayfish culture as well. It is used for the human consumption, even if this one is smaller than the previous one, than Herax quadricarinatus. So it is not so aggressive in comparison with Herax crayfish. So this is the reason why you can produce crayfish in more in higher densities, and the culture can be more profitable therefore. And this is also very popular as ornamental animal, and it is kept in aquaria on the whole planet. But some countries decided this crayfish to be very risky, successful invader, and decided to establish a legislative ban on import and keeping of this animal. For example, in the European Union, it is currently illegal to import Procambarus clarki from abroad to the territory of European Union, and in some countries, also the keeping of the animal is prohibited. How is the crayfish in Indonesia? It was found also by my team in cooperation with staff from IPB in 2018 or 2017, but we published the result in 1 year later in Java, in a village which is named Pasir Angin. It is close to the city of Bogor as well. And the crayfish was found in the pond system, and you can see that the abundance of red swamp crayfish is very high. This is just one catch for without any intensive activity. So we caught a huge population of Procambarus clarki there, and many females were gravid. So the population is increasing for sure, and there are no barriers to protect the ponds and to stop the potential migration and spreading of the crayfish to the vicinity, and therefore it is perceived to be not artificial population, but population which is established in the wild. But there is a significant negative consequence, much more risky than only spreading of non-native crayfish, and this is the crayfish plague. It is a pathogen or disease caused by pathogen Aphanomyces astacyi, which is lethal for all crayfish of non-North American origin. And we have crayfish plague in Europe, for example, and this is the main reason why European crayfish population declined rapidly in the past, and currently we have all European crayfish endangered due to spreading of this pathogen. And we found this pathogen in Pasir Angin village, in the crayfish which are cultured there. These are just vectors, just hosts, which are resistant to the pathogen, but can help to spread the pathogen to the vicinity. And the other Indonesian crayfish are sensitive to the disease. And we have also some example from from Thailand, where some crayfish farms were totally destroyed by this disease, and the red claw crayfish, which was cultured there, and the culture of this species terminated because all crayfish died. It is lethal, and there is no medication, no treatment which can help the infected crayfish to survive. So this is the first case of crayfish plague in Indonesia, in Southeastern Asia, in this region, and nobody knows what will follow in ongoing years. Moreover, we found also two other decoupled crustaceans in the locality: Paratelphusa convexa, freshwater crab, which is native, and Macrobranchium lanchesteri, freshwater shrimp, which is non-native. And both of them were also infected. We discovered the pathogen on their body, and it was surprised for us because the crayfish plague is named after crayfish, and everybody can expect that the main hosts will be crayfish. But in recent years, some new studies discovered the pathogen also in some crabs and in some shrimps. And this is the true also for Indonesia. Two species of other decoupled crustaceans, not only crayfish, are infected. The infection is not so high, or was not so high, and nobody knows what will follow. If the infection, if the concentration of the pathogen will be higher, if the mortality will come, or if these animals are maybe resistant and can serve just as vectors of the pathogen and can transport the pathogen to the vicinity. So both ends are bad. This situation has to be monitored for sure, because it is very risky not only for Indonesian biota in general, but also for the crayfish aquaculture. When the pathogen will spread, so the crayfish aquaculture can be in danger and can be terminated. So there are huge social economic consequences which are negative for local communities, and I'm sure that Indonesian government will focus on this topic. We would like to improve the communication and show that the culture of North American crayfish in Indonesia is very risky and should be banned for sure. The culture of Herax quadricarinatus, so there are some negative consequences as well, but it is not so risky as North American crayfish. North American crayfish is very successful invader carrying the pathogen, which can be lethal for many Indonesian crustaceans, and this is alarming. So here is some timeline of crayfish in the ornamental aquaculture. They were discovered for ornamental aquaculture in 1990s, when first crayfish were kept for the ornamental purpose. Few years later, in 2006, the first new species for science was discovered to be pet traded, and this situation remains. And there are many, especially New Guinean crayfish, which are captured by local collectors, traded as ornamentals, and exported abroad without a scientific name. And nobody knows from which locality these crayfish come, and nobody knows the name for sure. I would like to help to improve this situation. I'm able to describe the new species of crayfish, but I have no connection to some Papuan collectors to obtain the information of on type locality. And if somebody of you have the contacts there, so any information about the native localities of certain crayfish species from New Guinea can be very beneficial in this regard, because without the scientific name, it is not possible to monitor the species in the wild. And nobody knows if the intensive capture for ornamental purpose will be devastating for the species or not. And without a name, no activities can be managed. The formal description is the first step, and for the formal description, the type locality is necessary to be identified. So if you have any information about this issue, and if you would like to share the information with me, so we can together try to help some Indonesian crayfish in this regard, do not hesitate to contact me via email or WhatsApp or so on. And in 2013, the first survey of ornamental market with crayfish was done in Germany, and other countries were surveyed later in ongoing years. And in 2015, the crayfish plague pathogen was for the first time detected also in aquarium crayfish, so crayfish which are kept in aquarium. And this is the alarming situation, because the pathogen can be released to the vicinity also with the wastewater. When you clean the aquarium, the pathogen can be released with the water. So this is the reason why the ornamental aquaculture can be one of the most important pathways for spreading of invasive species, not only crayfish, but also associated biota like pathogens. And this should be of a high attention of wildlife managers for sure. Not only pathogens are transported with ornamental crayfish. This is our recent publication from previous year, when we found one tiny animal, tiny invertebrate associated with Heras crayfish from Papua. Its name is Diceratocephala boschmai, which is temnocephalid. It is ectosymbiont, not parasite, not pathogen. So it is friendly to crayfish, just living on the surface of the carapace and cleaning the carapace. But nobody knows if this animal can also transport some virus or bacteria or other pathogens associated with its body. And therefore, monitoring of the associated biota of crayfish is also important. And it is poorly studied currently. There are just a few studies focused on this issue. And what is important, these temnocephalids and other associated biota are transported invisible. There are no possibilities how to regulate the import of these invertebrates, because they are not subjected by the trade. There is no documentation of the transport of these animals, and it is not possible to ban the transportation, because nobody knows that these animals are transported. Maybe some mandatory disinfection of the shipment can be done, but it can be risky for the crayfish. So it's not easy to disinfect in the shipment with ornamental crayfish. Meaning of this slide is that many invertebrates can be transported together with ornamental crayfish as well. How about the exploitation of crayfish species in Indonesia? They are exploited for human consumption, for sure, because the meat is luxury, as I mentioned before. And they are also, and here is example of some Papuan angler who catch the crayfish on bamboo stick with the earthworm as a live bait in Aikima River in Baliam River Valley in Papua province. And the target species is Herax monticula. Another purpose is live fish bait. This discover was done by my PhD student Genta Akmal, and the paper is submitted and will be published soon. So he discovered that many Indonesian anglers use live crayfish as a fish bait, and there is a high probability to escape, or some fishermen can release the unused bait in the stream. And this is also important pathway for introduction of non-native crayfish to the different water bodies in Indonesia. So the crayfish are used not only for culture, but can be spread also by this pathway. And the pet trade, ornamental aquaculture, one of the most important sectors of ornamental aquaculture is culture of decoupled crustaceans, including the crayfish. Indonesia was identified as the most important exporter of ornamental crayfish to the Czech Republic recently, and currently the situation remaining, and the Czech Republic is a gateway for the whole Europe. So this is the importance of monitoring of the market in the Czech Republic, not only for the local from the local perspective, but also from the European perspective, and maybe also from the global perspective. So it is clear Indonesia is the leader in this regard, and many of crayfish are captured in the wild, like haddocks from Papua, and many of them are also cultured, like Procamborus clarki and other species which are non-native. On the right side, the right corner, you can see example of the package with live crayfish which are transported for ornamental purpose. They are packed in small plastic boxes with wet foam on the bottom, and these boxes are placed in the polystyrene box, which is packed in the paper box. And the crayfish are transported without the water, just in the box, which has small holes in the cover due to breathing of the animal. And crayfish which are packed by this way can survive a couple of days for the transportation without problem. How is the pet trade in Indonesia? The most important city is Jakarta, for sure, because many of the shipments are transported from Jakarta to abroad. There are wholesaler facilities which are focused just on the ornamental animals. But where is the origin of ornamental crayfish? Many of them, the native crayfish, are transported from Sorong to Jakarta. These animals are captured in the wild, mostly in West Papua province, and transported to the market in Sorong. And from Sorong, they are transported to the wholesalers in Jakarta. The other animals are transported also to Surabaya or Jogja, but most of them are transported to Jakarta. And from Jakarta, these animals are via the international pet trade transported by plane to the United States, to Europe, and to Japan. Not only, also to other countries like Singapore and so on, but most of them are transported to these three regions. The other animals are produced mostly in Java, but not only in Java, and are transported to the other islands in Indonesia, but also to Australia. This is the domestic pet trade. This is our recent publication focused on New Guinean crayfish, which were discovered in the wild out of the Papuan territory and out of the Indonesian territory. And these were discovered in Hungary, in Europe, And there is one thermal pond system where these crayfish are able to survive and to successfully overwinter, which was surprising for us a little bit. Moreover, some of them are discovered in the vicinity in small brook, which is not thermal. So there is some possibility, some probability that these crayfish, part of them, are able to survive in colder temperatures, and when yes, so these animals can reproduce, and their offspring can survive there for sure. And nobody knows what will follow. Maybe the establishment of new populations will be not successful. But if yes, so some paradoxically, some endangered crayfish from Papua can invade new localities in Europe. Who knows? We will see that the locality is monitored, and we are in close communication with some Hungarian researchers, and we will see after a few years what will follow. So this is the direct consequence of the pet trade, which is not well managed, because New Guinean crayfish are traded for higher prices in Europe, and but this is no limitation for the keepers and owners to release these animals to the wild. So. Therefore, it is also important to describe formally the new species which are pet traded, because nobody knows in some cases which animal is in Hungary. It is ornamental, some pretty colored crayfish. We are sure that it is from the genus Herax, but nobody knows the scientific name, because there is no scientific name. So again, if you have any information on Papuan crayfish in the pet trade and so on, so it can be very beneficial for the scientific community, for the wildlife managers, for the conservationists, and for decision makers and other stakeholders. How is the harvesting of the native crayfish in Papua? Overharvesting is possible, but has been not evaluated up to date, and nobody knows if some populations are completely destroyed or the species maybe or not. For example, one of the first meetings with the crayfish from Papua was in 2008 in one wholesaler in the Czech Republic, where Herax albertici, one similar species to Herax quadricarinatus, which is native to Papua, was traded in huge quantities. It was imported from Sorong to Jakarta, and from Jakarta to Praha, and in huge quantities. But a few years later, there was no Herax albertici traded as ornamental, and the reason is unknown. Maybe some local collector do not be keen to continue with the capture of the crayfish, or there can be some other factors, or the crayfish species declined. Nobody knows. And there was no monitoring of the wild population, no information, data completely deficient, and this is important because we can easily damage the endemic crayfish species by intensive capture. They can be overharvested by local collectors. Many of them died before are sold. So the pressure can be very intensive, and there can be significant negative consequences for sure. So this is also our mission, to improve the situation and try to help the native crayfish in Papua to be not extinct. About the trade routes, and there are some trade routes which were monitored and published together with Dr. Juliana and our team, and we focused on ornamental crayfish in Java Island. More than than or more, at least 6 species were recorded to be pet traded in Java on the domestic market. It was a little bit surprising for me that the pet trade, the the intranational pet trade in Indonesia is well established. Before my visits to Indonesia, I thought that most of the species, most of these animals are transported abroad. But I was so surprised how many aquarium keepers, um, pet fish and crayfish owners are in Indonesia. And there are huge quantities of crayfish which are traded domestically. And just evidences about the volume of the pet trade with crayfish are based on the evidences, statistical evidences from the export. But I'm sure that at least the same amount of crayfish are traded domestically. So the pressure on the wild populations in Papua can be much higher than we expected before. So the monitoring of the domestic trade is also very important. And here we present the pathways. You can see the red lines on the picture B, where the crayfish are transported from one city to another. And it is easy to say that crayfish are transported everywhere in Java Island in huge quantities. And these crayfish are transported also from Australia to Surabaya or from Sorong to Jakarta, as I mentioned before. One of the most important hotspots for ornamental crayfish trade is Jogja, as you can see on the picture, and the finding or the output from this analysis is that crayfish are transported in huge quantities everywhere in Java, and the similar situation will be also in other islands, I guess, or if not the same, so at least similar. So the possibility to invade new localities for ornamental crayfish is very high because people can release them, and the crayfish can escape from the facilities, they can escape from the home aquaria as well, because they are able to climb on the wall of the aquarium and walk without the water on the terrestrial environment. So they can easily invade the new locality if can walk due to humid environment, and humid environment is almost everywhere in Indonesia. So this is the reason why the invasion or possible invasion of some non-native crayfish is very easy. And the transport is unlimited, this is my knowledge. There is no limitation for the local traders, and they have no information about the harmful consequences. As is my knowledge, my personal experience with Indonesian counterparts, everybody thinks that crayfish are from Papua. All crayfish are from Papua. Surprising for me, I discovered one aquarium in Dunia Air Tawar in Jakarta in 2017, where also aquarium with freshwater crayfish was given. The label was Herax crayfish from Papua, but the crayfish inside was North American crayfish, the Procambarus clarki, and it was completely misidentification done by public aquarium, by the authority. And therefore, I guess that nobody cares about the nativeness of the crayfish and about the origin of the crayfish. Maybe just some experts in the field, but the general public do not care about this problem, about this topic. And therefore, the possibility to take the North American crayfish, for example, and transport them to other islands, to new environments, new localities is high. And without the management, without the wide communication with the Indonesian people, I guess that we can see North American crayfishes and other non-native crayfishes in Indonesian wild in the near future. And this can be also also your mission to communicate with local people, to communicate with the traders and the farmers and so on, to say, look, here are some crayfish which are not from our country, which are risky for our animals, which are risky for our aquaculture, and they should be not cultured and not spread to the other localities, because the possible negative consequences will follow quickly. And there are many examples from my country or from Europe in general, because our crayfish populations were destroyed by non-native species, by non-native pathogen of crayfish plague. I would like to stop the spreading of these animals and pathogens in Indonesia and try to protect Indonesian awesome biota, because there are many species which can be in risk in future. In this regard, we tried to predict the situation when non-native crayfish will be introduced to New Guinea. Not only to Indonesian part of the island, but to the whole island, because the crayfish do not care about human borders and can spread over the island easily. We assessed by climate matching, by some tool for climate matching, which is named Maxent, and compared the native range of all of these crayfish with the climate conditions in New Guinea, and we obtained following results. The red color indicates the territory where the crayfish can easily establish the population and survive for future. The number or the picture A, the map of New Guinea, you can see that the altitude is very variable in Indonesia. There are mountains in the central part of the island which are very high, up to 5,000 meters above the sea level. There is the iceberg on the top, and on the other hand, the green color are lowlands where are some swamps and so on, and the climatic conditions are completely different. So the territory of New Guinea is very variable, and this is the reason why many endemic species are there in very limited areas, and the biodiversity of the island is very high. And back to the crayfish, you can see letter B, the picture, the map of Procambarus clarkii, the red swamp crayfish from North America. The crayfish has a high probability to establish new populations, especially in the mountain regions, because the climate conditions, the temperature is very similar to the native range of the species. And once established, so it can spread easily everywhere. It can walk on the terrestrial environment for 2 days. It is able to migrate for 4 kilometers. So the spreading is easy for this creature, and it is a carrier of crayfish plague. So when Procambarus clarkii will be introduced to New Guinea, it will be bad news for Indonesian crayfish biota, for the native crayfish from Papua, because this crayfish can easily outcompete the native species, can reproduce bombastically, rapidly in the same year when the crayfish is hatched. So the female can bear the first eggs in the same year. In comparison with New Guinean crayfish, these are adult in the period of 3-4 years. So the increasing of the population of Procambarus clarkii is rapid when the conditions are suitable for this crayfish. Moreover, it is able to survive in very polluted water, and this is the strong reference to New Guinean crayfish. And it can easily inhabit also polluted waters in the vicinity of big cities and so on. And it is not so aggressive in comparison with Hyrax crayfish from New Guinea, and therefore the fights and the mortality is lower in this species. So it is perfect invader, and everybody should stop the possible introduction of Procambarus clarki to New Guinea, because it can easily damage many native species there. The letter C, marbled crayfish, Procambarus virginalis, and this is related to the previous one, also North American crayfish, which is very popular as ornamental animal. Currently, we have no population of marbled crayfish in Indonesia, fortunately. But since this one is very popular as ornamental, so no one can say what will follow. Maybe some farmer will decide to culture this animal in Indonesia as well. And this can be very risky for the whole Indonesia, and also for the island of New Guinea. You see the red color, the localities on the island where this crayfish can establish. The marbled crayfish is also a vector of crayfish plague pathogen, and moreover, its reproduction mode is unique in the comparison with the other crayfish, because it is parthenogenetic, and just the female, without mating with the male, produce unfertilized eggs, and from these eggs, the clones of the mother are hatched. So one female is enough for the new population establishment, and this is very risky. And this species is the most successful invader in case of all crayfish on the globe. So it is known from Europe, it is known from Madagascar, it is known from Japan, and so on. And I guess that when this one will be introduced to Indonesia, so very negative consequences will come soon. Do not release this crayfish to the wild. Do not introduce them to Indonesia. It is really very risky. And also in case of New Guinea, for sure, it is small crayfish, smaller than Procambarus clarki, smaller than all of Hera's crayfish in New Guinea, but it is very aggressive and can outcompete the native species by population boom easily. Letter D, the map of Cambarolus patsquarensis. Cambarolus patsquarensis is dwarf crayfish from Mexico. It is endangered in its native range. It is endemic to Lake Pátzcuaro and the river which outflow from the lake, and it is endangered due to pollution of the water and human activities. But it is very popular as ornamental animal due to tiny size. It can be kept in smaller aquariums, and therefore it is cultured by producers focused on ornamental animals elsewhere. And we have no records from Indonesia, but their culture is possible there. So therefore we decided to test the species, to analyze the climatic conditions. And you can see that at least part of New Guinea, the highland and Arfak Mountains on Bird's Head Peninsula in Kepala Burung are suitable for establishment of Cambarolus patsquarensis. This crayfish is not aggressive, not parthenogenetic. They have just a few offspring, not so intensively reproducing as previous two species, but it is carrier of crayfish plague pathogen as well. So this is the reason why introduction of this tiny crayfish can be risky. The same reason as in Procambarus clarki, Procambarus virginalis. All of North American crayfish can be risky in this regard. The same is for the next species, Procambarus alani, letter E, which is also carrier of the crayfish plague pathogen. But on the other hand, you can see the map, and there is no red patch, no red color on the map, and the climatic conditions are completely different on the island in comparison with the native range of Florida, where this crayfish is native. It was a little bit surprising for me, but so after the analysis, we are sure that Procambarus alani has very low probability to establish new population in the island of New Guinea when introduced there. But yeah, so it is also a carrier of the crayfish plague pathogen, and therefore it should be of an attention of the wildlife managers and decision makers in the whole Indonesia. Currently, we have no records from Indonesia, but we know that this crayfish is exported from Indonesia to abroad. So it is clear that some cultural facility is somewhere in Indonesia, maybe in Jogja, I don't know. So this is also our mission for future to discover the culture of the species and to say if there is some possibility to spread or not. And the last one in the list is Herax destructor, letter F. Herax destructor is native to Australia. It is Herax, but not Herax from New Guinea. So this one is also a successful invader in some countries where the crayfish plague do not occur, because this one is sensitive to crayfish plague. It is of Australian origin, not North American. So this is the reason why crayfish plague is lethal for Herax destructor. But when this crayfish will be introduced to New Guinea without the crayfish plague, and there is no crayfish plague on the island, so it can establish also some new population in the Central Highland, as you can see on the map, and very limited area in the Arfak Mountains. So it can be also of attention of wildlife managers, but not so risky in comparison, for example, with Procambarus clarkii. It is clear that Procambarus clarkii and Procambarus virginalis, both of them are the most risky species for Indonesia, and especially for New Guinea, Papua and West Papua provinces. And I guess that at least these two species should be banned in Indonesia. Maybe all crayfish species from North America, because the risks are very high, and when the crayfish is introduced, so there are very limited possibilities what to do with the new population, how to mitigate the crayfish, how to eradicate the crayfish. We have no successful way, no effective way how to do it without the total disturbance of the environment, like application of some toxic liquid or something like this. And on the other hand, when you would like to kill all of them by some toxin, there is a probability that crayfish will be the only one creature which will survive, because it can dig very deep burrows, holes, where the clear water can exist. For example, Procambarus clarkii can dig holes of 8 meters length. So it is highly burrowing, intensively burrowing species. By the way, by this activity, by this behavior, this crayfish can easily damage the dams, and it is additional risk for the farmers, because this crayfish can dig holes through the dam, and yeah, so there is the water which can be released by this way. And yeah, so the possibility how to eradicate the crayfish is not so wide. When you will apply the toxin, some crayfish will climb out from the water and will survive on the terrestrial environment, and when the wave of the toxin will go out from the water, so crayfish can invade back the locality. So it is clear that the prevention of new introductions is the most important, much higher than eradication or mitigation of once established populations of non-native crayfish. Therefore, predictions like this one, which can identify the high-risk species, are much appreciated, because we can say this creature is harmful and risky before its introduction to some island. and this is very important. And when some wildlife managers will be keen to focus on this topic, we can present these results, these outputs to say, okay, look, this one is risky, this one not. Stop the culture and introduction of risky species and focus on the low risk one. This is the solution which we are suggesting, because the total ban without the solution is not feasible. Local farmers who would like to produce the crayfish as a valuable animal, so they will not be keen to follow the idea of the ban. They would like to produce the crayfish for the profit. So I agree. I'm in, but there are some limitations for the list of the species. The high risk species should be banned, and just low risk species can be produced. It is true not only for crayfish, for sure, also for fishes and so on. But currently we are talking about the crayfish, and you can see the clear solution what to do.
Okay, Dr. Patoka, thank you very much for such comprehensive explanation about your findings. I'm afraid that the presentation time is already up, but we can still continue. Okay. We can still continue the session on Q&A session, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much once again for the presentation. It was very complete and comprehensive. I marked also some highlights from your presentation. You mentioned, and at the beginning, you that your research journey in Indonesia about crayfish. If I'm not mistaken, it's already started from 2017 and still continuing until now. You also discovered indeed some indigenous and non-indigenous crayfish, either from Papua, Java, and other places in Indonesia. You also found some farm culture, which developed from by the localities in Indonesia. There you also show us some pictures on your presentations. And lastly, you explain about the probability to establish new population. If I'm not mistaken, there are at least two types of crayfish, which is two species which might be dangerous if it is released widely, right? Okay, so it is very interesting, and I believe the participants also very excited to ask deeper about these issues. We have a lot of questions. So I hope you might want to answer one by one, and our team will help us to present the questions. Okay, thank you. Okay. So yes, the first question from Dr. Edward Sinar: is there any disease threats from crayfish for aquatic diversity in Indonesia? What are the natural enemies of crayfish that you can find in Indonesia?
So thank you very much for this question. Crayfish are attractive prey for many animals, like fishes, like birds, including heron, for example, or kingfisher, and so on. And some of the predatory fishes can be nice biological way how to regulate the population of the crayfish. But on the other hand, from the European case, we can say that the total eradication of the crayfish by some predator is impossible, because some small animals, small individuals like juvenile crayfish and so on will survive. And so you can try to use some predatory fishes to regulate the crayfish, but not to mitigate or eradicate them.
Okay, thank you very much for the clear answer. And we have also some questions from our students. They are from biology study program, agribusiness, and so on. Like the second question is from Mr. Abeng Reza Mahendra. How many type of crayfish, sir? I believe you've already explained some of the crayfish types on your presentation. Would you add some information here?
Yeah, the total number is more than 600 species in total on the planet.
600.
And yeah, more than 600.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the next one is there a natural breeding solution without destroying nature? From Alia.
Yeah. So nice question. Thank you. Some isolated systems of indoor tanks, which are um, equipped by some barriers to stop the escaping of the crayfish to the vicinity, is possible to be used for the culture of crayfish. But you have to be sure that your stock is not infected by crayfish plague, and that there is no possibility how to release the pathogen to the vicinity. You can use, for example, some sterilization of the wastewater by freezer or by UVC and so on. But the risks of escaping are likely mostly everywhere. So therefore, I suggest to culture just the low risk species only.
Okay, thank you. And the fourth question is how expensive are crayfish there? What kind of steps do we take to maintain the population? Oh, and I think there are three questions here from Mr. Arif Mista. And the last is how did you get to know Papua?
Yeah. So crayfish are some crayfish are expensive and some of them no. The crayfish which are used for the human consumption are usually not so expensive in comparison with crayfish which are used for the ornamental aquaculture or ornamental keeping. And but the price is not so high in Indonesia, and it is possible to take huge amount of crayfish and transport them everywhere. The price increased during the trade line. For example, in the Europe, the price is much higher than in Indonesia, where these crayfish are produced. So the price is not limitation for the crayfish in Indonesian perspective.
Yeah. So it also depends on the types of crayfish you mentioned.
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And on the size, not only
Okay. Yes.
species, but also size.
Yeah. Okay. So the fifth question is, it's interesting that Indonesia has a wide biodiversity, including crayfish. What is the role of crayfish to biodiversity?
Yeah.
From Ikhwan Shah.
Thank you very much for this question. So crayfish are usually perceived to be environmental engineers because when they occur in the environment, they occur there in some dense population usually, and therefore they can modify the environment by burrowing activity, by preying of some invertebrates and also some small vertebrates and so on. And yeah, they can be engineers for the wildlife.
The engineers for the wildlife. Okay, then the sixth question is, in Indonesia, in Bahasa, pentingkah menjaga kestabilan populasi lobster? I believe you also speaks Bahasa, or do I need to translate?
Yeah.
Okay.
My knowledge of Bahasa is poor, unfortunately.
Okay, so the question from Zaya Natul Ilmi is how important to keep the crayfish population stable in the nature? How important?
Yeah. So because the crayfish are environmental engineers, as I mentioned, So the stable population is crucial, because when the population is unstable, so it will decline rapidly. Usually crayfish in the locality are in the maximum numbers, or there is no crayfish. So the population is well established or declining rapidly.
Yeah, that's why also in the last findings you explain about the probability of to establish the new population, it is also something that needs to be aware, yeah, about the species which is endangered or might boost the population, etc.
Yeah.
Okay, and the seventh question is, why are crayfish found in Papua?
So I'm not sure if I understand correctly this question. Crayfish are native in Papua, and the our knowledge about the richness of crayfish biodiversity in Papua is very limited, because there were just few expeditions focused on the crayfish, and currently not more than 26 species were discovered. But I'm sure that the total number of crayfish there is much higher.
Yeah, need to be researched more. Okay, the next question. Okay, from Ahmad Erfa Kashani. Can the crayfish be cultivated in fresh water?
Yeah. It's the only way how to culture the crayfish, because all of them, with the only one exception of crayfish from the Black Sea, is all of them are freshwater.
Freshwater.
Yeah, so it is necessary to cultivate them in freshwater.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is from Muhammad Dafar. So I want to ask how to prevent crayfish from contracting the plague.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Unfortunately, we have no way how to do it, and there is no treatment, no medicines how to treat the crayfish plague. And about the prevention, just isolate the non-native crayfish from North America from the others. This is the only way how to do it. For example, in Jakarta in 2017, I visited one street pet market, and there was in the same aquarium stocked the North American crayfish and also the Papuan crayfish. This is the bad approach how to do it, because the North American crayfish can infect by crayfish plague the Papuan crayfish. So everything should be separated. North American crayfish, and also the equipment like nets and so on should be isolated from the others. But my best suggestion is not to stop the culture of North American crayfish. Just focus on your native crayfish.
Okay, focus on our native crayfish. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the next question is from Yosua. Do we have to put on some ingredients to water to determine the growth of crayfish?
Yeah. So if you mean some support of crayfish growth in the aquaculture, you can use the some food, some diet with higher content of proteins and the fat and so on. And for example, fish meat, and the crayfish will grow more rapidly.
Yeah. Maybe is there any specific vitamins or medicines in crayfish cultivation?
Vitamins, maybe vitamin E is important for the egg production, but not for growing. And also the calcium content is important, because crayfish require the calcium for the carapace construction.
Okay.
And this is important, but crayfish are omnivores, and you can use as the feeder everything what you want. For example, carrot or cucumber, or the fish meat, or some snails, and so on. When you will feed your crayfish by meat, they will grow more intensively.
Okay, noted. And the next question is from Muhammad Raji Radiansyah, one of our lecturer from from FST. What is the main hurdle in controlling the crayfish population in non-indigenous area?
Yeah, so thank you very much for this question. The main hurdle is in the non-native area. Pardon. Yeah, so usually the early detection of the species, because they are spreading usually in low numbers and start the reproduction. And in the low numbers, there is no possibility how to detect the crayfish in most cases. It is just a random. And when we detect the crayfish, the abundance is much higher usually, and therefore there is no possibility how to apply some management on restricted area in the early stage of the invasion, and when the crayfish is widespread. So our possibilities are much lower without the total disturbance of the environment. Therefore, the prevention of the introduction is the most important.
Okay, so the prevention. Okay, thank you. And wow, there's still a lot of questions here. And the next question is from Didin Komarudin. How long does it take for crayfish to grow, and what is the density of crayfish?
Yeah, so thank you very much for this question. It depends on the species. Crayfish like Procambarus clarki or Procambarus virginalis can grow rapidly because their lifespan is short, 2 or 3 years only, and they will be in the suitable length for the salt in the same year when they or the next year when they hatched. But in comparison, the Herax crayfish from New Guinea, the lifespan is much longer, and their growth rate is not so intensive. So therefore, they will be in the sale condition after a couple of years. And for example, the biggest crayfish on the world, Astacopsis goldie, which is native to Tasmania. So they will be in the adulthood after 9 years. So it depends on the crayfish species. And about the density, so it is hard to say because it is closely related to the aggressiveness of the crayfish. When you will culture the aggressive species like Herax from Papua, so you will need many shelters and big tanks and feeding ad libitum and so on to mitigate the aggressive behavior of the crayfish. But when you will produce some North American crayfish like Procambarus clarki or marbled crayfish, so the aggressiveness is not so high, the intraspecific aggressiveness, and therefore the density can be also higher. So it depends on the species.
Okay, thank you. And the 12th question is from Yuli Ratnasari, also students. She asked about which one is the best crayfish who can resist plague, and how we can stop the plague if the crayfish and the environment is infected.
So all of North American crayfish are resistant to the crayfish plague. These are vectors. The others are sensitive. So no one can say which one of the crayfish from the rest of the world, not from the North America, are the best, because all of them are sensitive. And how we can stop the crayfish plague, there is no way how to do it. Our knowledge in this regard is insufficient currently. It is under the research, of course, but we have no way how to do it, unfortunately. So therefore, the prevention of new introductions is crucial. when the pathogen is introduced. So there is no possibility how to save the population of native crayfish. All of them will die rapidly.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So, is there any more? Okay, two last questions from Dr. Heidi Haryadi. What's the difference between indigenous crayfish in Indonesia with the other country? Maybe you found some characteristics.
Yeah. So, crayfish from New Guinea, from the Papua, these are pretty colored. This is on the first side, the main difference in comparison with the crayfish from the rest of the world. It is the most probably caused by the history of the crayfish on the island or freshwater biota on the island, because crayfish are closely related to the marine lobsters. Marine lobsters are ancestors of freshwater crayfish. And on the island, some animals were captured when the sea level fall down. So some fish and crustaceans were isolated on the island and were able to survive in fresh waters. And fortunately for them, and there is no big native predator. And therefore, fishes like rainbow fish or crayfish like Herax crayfish can be pretty colored, similarly as marine ancestors, because the coloration is limited when in vicinity is some predator who can focus on pretty colored animals, and therefore for example, European crayfish are mostly brownish or greenish, that's all. But Papuan crayfish are full of blue, red, orange colors, and the coloration is awesome. And this is the reason why these crayfish are very popular as ornamental creatures, even if they are aggressive.
Yeah, it has a pretty colors.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think it's also still related to the last question from Ms. Erika Pradana. What is the major differentiation between Indonesian crayfish and European crayfish? And what are the dominant factors cause those differences?
Okay, so there are different families. And European crayfish are of family Astacidae, and Indonesian crayfish are from the family Parastacidae. There are some differences in reproduction system or in the reproduction, because the crayfish from Europe have some special small legs on their abdomen which can transport some spermatophores to the female, and the Indonesian crayfish, the males, have no legs like this. And on the other hand, some of Indonesian crayfish have soft patches on their claws, which is the function of these soft patches is unknown. This is the difference on the first side between European crayfish and Indonesian crayfish. There are more factors like behavior, like ecology, biology, and so on, which can be mentioned, but it is not in our possibilities now to do it here. If you would like to discuss later, so do not hesitate to ask me. I'm keen to answer.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers of those interesting questions one by one. Thank you very much. We still have a little time to continue our Q&A session. I will welcome questions from raise hand feature. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question? Maybe one. Okay, there are 3 students raised or maybe Mr. Randy, the first one. Do you have any question? Mr. Randy? No? Okay, Miss Dian Novitasari? Did you raise your hand? Do you have any question? Oh, okay. Seems they only just raised their hand. Okay, Miss Novi Andriani, do you want to ask a question? Okay, please. Would you please open your camera? Thank you.
Wait.
Hello. So, please mention your name and your study program if you are students. Okay. Okay, please.
Oke, boleh pakai bahasa Indonesia, Kak?
Boleh.
Aku Novi dari Fakultas Sains jurusan apa tuh?
Ayo, apa?
Agribusiness. Ini
Oke.
penyuluhan dan minat pertanian.
Oke. Ya.
Ini ada satu pertanyaan, apakah crayfish termasuk spesies yang dilindungi? Dan ya, satu lagi, dan apakah untuk membudidayakannya harus melalui perizinan terlebih dahulu?
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Novi, for the question from Agribusiness Study Program. So there are two questions from Novi. The first one is that is crayfish included is crayfish is protected species? And the second question, is there any legal rules to cultivate crayfish in Indonesia?
As is my knowledge, in Indonesia there are no restrictions, no regulations, no rules mandatory for aquaculture focused on crayfish production. And crayfish from Papua in most cases are endangered, but not sorted as protected species by the legislature. So I guess that this is also our mission, what will be or what would be improved in future.
Yes, that's interesting. So Novi, jadi jawaban itu ya. Jadi tidak ada regulasi khusus untuk membudidayakan crayfish, dan crayfish di Papua itu belum termasuk protected species gitu ya. So one last question, I think. Miss Afrina, do you have any questions? No? Timotheus? No? Mr. Dani?
Hello.
Yes, please.
No. Jadi sorry ya.
Who's that? Okay. Okay. Mr. Jonathan, do you have any question? Yes, please open your mic. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Jiri. I want to ask. Perkenalan diri dulu ya.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Jiri. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Penayungan from Faculty of Science and Technology, Agribusiness program. I want to ask, what is the best species of crayfish to breed for a beginner? Thank you.
Seems like Mr. Jonathan interested in crayfish cultivation.
Yes.
Okay, okay, please.
Okay, so it is hard to say because species which are able to survive everything and it is perfect for the beginner are usually the most invasive species. So, for example, the marbled crayfish or the red swamp crayfish are perfect for the beginners to be kept in some home aquarium. But on the other hand, these crayfish are invasive. So my recommendation is to focus on Herax quadricarinatus because the red claw crayfish from Papua and Australia, because it is also not so sensitive, and it is not so invasive and not the host of the and vector of crayfish plague. So you can buy Herax quadricarinatus everywhere in Indonesia, and what is necessary for you is just to place it to the sufficiently big tank of at least 40 liters, for example, per one individual. And it is not possible to stock there more than one individual because they are aggressive and one can kill another. So my suggestion is Herax quadricadenatus and just one individual.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much,
Sama-sama.
Dr. Jiri Patoka, PhD, for the question and answers. It's such clear, complete, and comprehensive. I believe our students also are very excited to discuss this new insights with you. And this is also the end of our Q&A sessions. However, Dr. Patoka, please kindly remain present as the next agenda. We would like to give a certificate as an appreciation from our study program. The certificate will be delivered by Dean of Faculty of Science and Technology, Universitas Terbuka, Dr. Subakti Nurmawati. Thus, I would like to invite Dr. Subakti Nurmawati to the main room to give an appreciation certificate to Dr. Jiri Patoka, PhD.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jiri Patoka, for your sharing. Hopefully, this your presentation very useful for us and encourage for us to research, especially for crayfish in Indonesia. Thank you very much. This is certificate of appreciation for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Subakti Nurmawati. Once again, would like to thank Dr. Jiri Patoka, PhD, for a very great presentation and a very insightful presentations. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we finish our agenda for today, we would like to thank you to our speakers, to the guests and participants who already participate in this sharing session forum. Before we close the event, I would like to ask all of the participants to open the camera so we could have a nice photograph. Mr. Mahdi, would you help us to give some aba-aba?
Yes, Miss.
Okay. So
Okay.
everyone, give your best smile.
We have 6 slides. Countdown in 3, 2, 1. Next slide. 3, 2, 1. Next slide. 3, 2, 1. Next. 3, 2, 1. Next slide. 3, 2, 1. Last slide. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you, Miss.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahdi. Thank you very much once again for all participants. I would like to remind you, don't forget to fill the attendance form and evaluation form, which are available on the chat box. And finally, we arrive at the end of the event. We hope you enjoy the knowledge sharing session, and we will see you again in the next visiting lecturer event with other interesting topics. See you and goodbye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.